So there are three potential options that we could be looking
Correct.
at. Which one is going to be most beneficial for your company, and what would be the immediate effect?
We don't have, great question. We don't have a position, Alex, on which of those three remedies. The point is that the objective behind those remedies, we think Commerce Department got absolutely right. The objective is to bring back the U.S. production that's ready to come back, somewhere between 700,000 tons and 1 million tons. We think any of those remedies will do that, or an alternative remedy, as the Secretary of Commerce said, the President could choose something else. But as long as the objective is achieved, we're good to go.
Yeah, and we have a full screen that kind of shows that you could have like 7.7% of imports from all countries, or like a 24% tariff on products from things like Russia or China, etc. Canada. Should Canada be exempt?
If you look at the good question, if you look at the report, it suggests that whatever the tariff or quota regime is, it should be applied to everybody with no exceptions at all. And we think that's important, and that we think is clear in the report.
How many people do you hire?
Immediately, we're going to bring back, we talked about this on our earnings call yesterday, and this is really exciting. So we would bring back all of our 3 lines at Hawesville. That's 150,000 tons of the roughly 700,000 tons that the Commerce Secretary has cited that can come back. In addition, we have a plant in South Carolina, as you may know. There, it's a little bit more complicated. We need to solve a power issue there and get full access to the power market, but that would be another 350 folks as well. So there's up to 700 people that would come back. These are mostly steelworker jobs in Kentucky, good-paying jobs. We're looking forward to getting going.
On the downside, though, the worry is retaliation. U.S. Secretary of Defense James Mattis urged targeted tariffs on steel and aluminum, worried that it might antagonize allies, that it might have that repercussion. How do you think about that?
Look, again, targeted, broad, the report calls for any or all of the above. We're agnostic as to how they get there, as long as the objective is achieved.
But do you export?
No, we don't export.
So it's only domestic?
Absolutely. Remember, the U.S. market, one of the great things here, and one of the things that this whole process of 232 is trying to solve, is that the U.S. market is so short. We're producing 700,000 tons now of almost 6 million tons of demand. So we could sell every ton we produce times 10 in the U.S., and that's what we do. We got great customers here.
So let's talk about demand. If you take a look at, say, Chinese exports and lower aluminum prices, for example, we have a chart that we can pull up on the terminal, and China exports have been increasing significantly. In fact, China produced the highest amount of aluminum since June. That's going to lead to higher exports no matter what, regardless of the tariffs.
Well, no, number one, your data are absolutely correct. So China exports hit a record in 17. We think they're going to be up another 20% and hit another record in 18, something like 5 million tons. The fact of the matter is, we think that ultimately, that the remedy that's put in will, in fact, address Chinese overcapacity in exports, because the fact of the matter is, they'll no longer have a place to send their their excess production. Ultimately, it makes its way into the U.S. in the form of some product or another, maybe through another country first, but ultimately, we're the dumping ground here, because we only supply 700,000 tons for a 5.5 million ton market. So if that's not economic for them to do anymore, if that metal can't ultimately come in here at economic prices, they're going to have to do something about it.
Okay, but let's talk about that, because the first chart we actually just pulled up showed U.S. imports from China, and they're very, very low.
Very small and primary.
So there's two schools of thought. One is that they're getting it in other ways, like you alluded to. The other is they're just weighing down aluminum prices, which makes the U.S., like yourself, have to shut down refineries, and we have to buy metal from overseas. Which is it?
Both of those things. It's cause and effect. They're exporting aluminum. It's eventually making it into the U.S. in some form or another, not in primary aluminum because of their export VAT, their taxation regime, right? So they're coming in form of semi-fabricated products, absolutely. And the impact is of that excess production. It's a globally traded commodity. It doesn't matter where it is or where it goes, but if there's excess production in the world, that's going to weigh on the aluminum price long term. So you've got the two things right. One's cause, one is effect. Absolutely.
I want to round it out here talking about something that Treasury Secretary Mnuchin said yesterday to respond to Bloomberg. He wound up saying that wage inflation is not going to trickle through to overall inflation. You can have wage inflation and not necessarily inflation concerns. From where you sit, dealing with commodity costs, hiring more people, rising wages. What do you think of this statement?
It's not a big issue for us, Alex. Just to give you a sense of our total cash cost of sales, and this is the sector as a whole, it's different everywhere, but maybe 10% of our costs are labor costs, and that includes pensions and OPEBs and other legacy costs, so-called legacy costs as well. So for us, labor is important, obviously. We try to be more productive every year. But for us, wage inflation of a couple % a year, and we're seeing the same thing. Our surveys say we're right in the middle of compensation season right now in our company. We see somewhere between 2 and 3% this year as the U.S. market for employees like ours. It's just not a big issue for us. Electric power is a big issue for us, the cost thereof, and obviously the aluminum price if we have a fairly traded market.